built in this time for Party for Progress. Yes, PFP, we have candidate number 1, the leader, Melissa Gumbs, here with us this morning. Good morning, Melissa.
Morning, Suppa. How are you?
I'm good, and we do have candidate number 9. Yes, Marlon Hodge. There we go, Marlon Hodge. Here with us this morning as well. Good morning to the both of you. How are both of you doing today?
I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, 12 more days.
12 more days.
12 more days.
Countdown is on.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. So,
but before we get into it,
yes, go ahead.
I wanted to just address something I heard because I was listening for the queue to come in. You know, your previous guest ran a little over time, but I wanted to just touch on something that they mentioned. And of course, your previous guest was MP Irian, former Minister of Finance Irian. They mentioned about a particular party being annoyed about this credit generator initiative, you know, that is coming out. And I mean, I just speak plainly. I don't like to speak in parables and riddles. But it's us that they were talking about, because he mentioned a certain party was annoyed at it. And, you know, even though they had done a workshop with credits as well. And I want to just clarify that a bit, because it's very misleading, which is typical, you know, from that camp, by saying it that way. They're being misleading by saying it like that, because the real reason that we were concerned is because everything in campaign season is shenanigans, basically. Yeah, but certain solutions should be apolitical as possible. And I mean, I studied marketing and communication, so I read that press release. So it definitely did look like, oh, as candidates of this party, this is what we have done. And so, you know, we can, you know, kind of like it's propaganda, basically. And I think it's unfortunate. And why I said it was unfortunate is because institutions like credits, normally you try to leave them as apolitical as possible. There's certain things in politics you don't touch. There's a reason that in normal countries, you don't really have leaders from other political countries, you know, from other parties in other countries endorsing you. We had that same situation last campaign with a poster with the President of Collectivité and the former Prime Minister. That sends a certain type of message, and it makes it difficult, because we know our politics is tribal. So you come into a scenario where, you know, oh, so because imagine some party, not us, some party might look at it and say, oh, so does credits not want to work with anybody else? Is credits now an extension of this party? That's how things come across. And the event that happened was actually by David Salomon from Salomon Solar on the Projects for Progress. And we did that for a reason. We set up a whole separate foundation for a reason, because that's normally what you do to keep things separated. I don't have no involvement in the board, in the planning or anything from that particular foundation. We set it up so that it could be a vehicle for any PFP member or anyone else in the community that has a message you want to bring across. We've done workshops, for example, with Guardian Group about pensions, pensions for young people, Major Foundation, you know, planning for your financial future, etc. All outside of this season as well. And, you know, I think that that's what, when I always say that you have leaders that are saying words, but they don't live a life that shows that they understand people and that they actually care. This is where you end up in that scenario, because you're misleading people and trying to make them emotional. So again, just to clarify, that collaboration using and renting the credits conference room, which is available as a training room for organizations to utilize, was done by Projects for Progress by David, who just happens to be a candidate. It was something that we were actually planning since like March. And unfortunately, we ended up in a snap election scenario where we are right now. So yeah, and it's unfortunate, because there's a difference between taking credit for something that you had little to none to do with and to actually helping people and actively contributing to the solution, you know. And it's unfortunate that, because the worst type of person is somebody that just has to beg for recognition for someone else's work. So I'm just wanted to clarify that, because I know that this is silly season and things pop out all the time. But much like that post that had to come down last campaign, these are why certain things have to stay apolitical and certain things have to stay sacred in this space. So with that, thank you for the time to clarify that.
All righty then. So like you said, 12 days to go. And like you said, you know, there's some misleading out there. How, in the next 12 days, how can we lead people down the right and truthful path for this upcoming elections? Because there's a lot of topics out there. From the GB situation, we could go on and on, from the housing situation. Schools are starting next week. A lot of schools still haven't been rebuilt or fixed or whatever. There's a lot of things that we could talk about right now.
Yeah, I think, and Marlon is here, as well, and we were just talking about it outside. Marlon is an entrepreneur in the hospitality space, and so I could imagine you're feeling it pretty bad as well with this GB on off
Of course,
business.
I think a lot of the hospitality sector, all the food and beverage industries are feeling the impact. And the thing is, we're only feeling the first wave. I keep saying it over and over. And even before the load shedding started, I talked about this over 2 years. It's just that this is getting strenuous on all of us. And we have to really define what we want to see for our future. And we have to start thinking about these things in the long term, the next 2 to 3 years. The impact that we are now facing from all of the crime raising and the impact of the fluctuation on the grid not being stable, it extremely impacts us in maybe 3 to 4 years from now, big time, because people don't forgive, and they have earned our trust to a certain point, and we're losing their trust. When you have to rebuild and go start from the scratch, it's not easy. You have 70% of the market feeling this impact all over. You're talking about people who are overworked and overstressed and can't get things working the way they want. We have a large community going automated. All of the restaurants now, they're using POS systems to keep track of their databases and all those type of things, which only works for about an hour. With load shedding, with that thing going on and off, I don't think it's very good for most of your information that you're transferring. But then you also have kitchens that are fully automated, and they send checks there through Bluetooth connections and Wi-Fi connections, and those computers also can't take that kind of stress. So,
and then it takes you like a half hour to get your cheeseburger.
Correct. Or somebody comes to the kitchen running, wondering, but what happened? How come it's stressful, and everyone's running on low fuel, and they're rolling on all this frustration, and they keep talking about this frustration and keep wording in frustration. And you have these other political people that want to campaign right on these type of sorrows and problems and issues, instead of coming up with like strategic solutions and being proactive, instead of just stating the same thing over and over. And now it's becoming a jingle or a song or whatever you want to call it, but they're running on these things over and over and over and saying the same things over and over. But are they literally saying some solutions? Weren't you there from the beginning of this? Didn't you see this coming, being the forefront, being in the leader's seat? Weren't you the one supposed to warn us about this and tell us about this in advance? I mean, 2017, we heard about the new generators coming in,
and then they didn't.
Yeah,
and I think even the former CEO of GB has said this repeatedly, that we could have seen this coming. They anticipated it coming, and the decision was made not to purchase new generators. Now, from a parliament perspective, we had drafted we were drafting, and now it's been completed, a parliamentary inquiry into GEBE
from 2021.
And we were working on it from then, because I think that type of deep dive has to happen. That takes a lot of time, at the same time, it takes a lot of time. It takes support in parliament, which I'm hoping to be able to get, however it shakes out on August 19th. But I think it's also about us having to be realistic with each other about the way that we do things, the way that we approach government-related entities, the way that we approach governance on our whole. At the end of the day, these are people's lives that we're talking about. And for me, it's frustrating as someone who's come from private sector to listen and come from hospitality. Actually, like, I can only imagine the chaos, and then what you have is frustrated visitors, but you also have just frustrated people. What is your productivity if you've been awake 4 hours of the night because you didn't have a fan? The heat that I told my mother the other day, when power goes by me in Defiance, I just have to leave the house and just drive around in my car. Not everybody has that luxury. And I do that because the heat we're dealing with now is not the heat when we were children. It's different. The climate change is a different type of hot. And that's, I think, what you're starting to see is the frustration on people's faces.
And we spoke about that the last time. Marlon was here, and he said, we're looking at the situation now. Okay, we're going to get the generators. Hopefully everything goes well, but we're not focusing on the mental impact that this is going to have on people. Even though the lights are back on 24/7 and we're good and rejoicing, we're not going to see the mental impact that it's going to have on people.
Much like with Irma, much like with COVID. That's how these things work. It's just crises are always, you see the impact maybe a year or two after the crisis is passed, so to speak. And that's part of the frustration. But we're hoping to be able to get a bigger mandate from the people to be able to actually display true leadership and action on these things. And I think, it doesn't take wild projects or anything like that to actually move the needle forward for the average Sint Maartener. And I also, we've also as a party tried to explain this when we go on the radio, when we have our town halls, when we talk to people in the street. It really is small changes that can lead towards big impact for persons. It's not that every minute you have to build, pour concrete, and it's like a broken record, but it's the thing that keeps coming back to me. You build, what do you fill it with? We are gonna be left with a lot of empty vessels, a lot of empty buildings, and there's nothing to pour into that. You have to, in public service, you have to pour into your community so that the community can then pour into the country as a whole. And right now, what I'm seeing across the board is, people that want to call themselves leaders, that are asking for your vote, neglecting the fact that, just a few short months ago, they were in the role for a solid 4 years, and now asking and trying to cast back to, we inherited this problem, we inherited that problem. For sure, there have been things that have been decided years ago, decades ago, but it doesn't mean that you took a step in the last 4 years to fix it. That's what we've always said. It just takes somebody bold enough to say, no, that's not how we're going to do it anymore, and then move forward. So I think that's definitely something that we're trying to push and receive a bigger mandate on August 19th to fix. Yeah.
Right. So what are some of those solutions from PFP? Because Marlon, you mentioned it. You have some candidates that are just you politicizing on some of the crises that we're going through, and Melissa just mentioned there's little things that we could do to help with some of these problems that we're going through. So we're hearing everyone saying, yes, we could fix this, we could do this, but then how are we doing it? What are some of those solutions?
One of the main things, Suppa, for PFP remains improving the governance within government. And I know that that's not sexy, it's not as cool as saying I'll build 500 homes or whatever, but sometimes you just have to do something simple. It doesn't always have to be big and grandiose. And what we've seen in this short time, for example, having Minister Patrice Gumbs in Vrami, is it really is just small little shifts in process. It's just attention, processes and systems, and just attention to that. It's remaining how public funds are spent. Because at the end of the day, that's our money. It's also looking at what you can cut from a spending perspective and channeling that money into a different avenue. Patrice has spoken a lot about the road fund. We've been talking about that since 2019. Your road taxes go into the black hole of government. It doesn't go into a targeted fund that is mandated to fix the road and maintain the road. Yeah. So that's a lot of that. It's really those simple fixes, and it's sometimes also about having the political will to do it, the political will to cut spending in certain areas. Some, again, we maybe have that different experience from coming from private sector, especially from hospitality. But creature comforts are always the first thing to be cut when you need to make tough decisions.
Like what you just said, wasteful society. We've taken for granted half of the things that we have. Now that GB is now cutting us, we have to now cut down on certain things. People are losing the natural resources that they depend on a regular basis. So budget cuts have to be made in government, but I think even now on a household level, people have to make cuts now due to the difficult times that we are facing. They are making the tough decisions that everyone had to make from years ago, and they have to really strategically figure out, what do we want to cut? What do they think that is not essential in their life? The same goes for government. Right,
because I would say, unfortunately, we're the ones, again, the people are the ones suffering from decisions that were taken or not taken by government, whether it's current, past, or whatever, and it's unfair. And you talk about, cuts coming from government level, parliamentary levels, but I know PFP at one point had a motion for parliamentarians to cut salaries. That didn't go through.
Yeah. No, it didn't. And I think, again, it goes back to what we've said repeatedly, which
is... hold on.
Sorry.
Yet the civil servants' pay, that was cut without any hesitation.
And I wonder sometimes what had happened if we had cut our salaries first, instead of letting it be something that we were told to do. At the end of the day, I think it's also about people. It's also about knowing how people operate and the psychology of how politics is sometimes handled. When we proposed that motion, it was also to show initiative. Sint Maarten always is kind of like reactive, or we don't like to be called certain things or so. But then you have to be the bigger person and actually put your money where your mouth is, literally, and say, I'm willing to be uncomfortable if it means that my people don't have to be. That's the bottom line of public service. That is that's the core of it. It's I'm willing to be uncomfortable. You know, you've heard stories. I think it was, I'm not sure which South American country it was, but the president had a salary of like $1 or something like that. He dropped his own salary just so that he could be able to funnel that money into different programs and such. And when you start talking about it, a lot of people get uncomfortable. Like, well, yeah, but you know, MPs and ministers have mortgages and stuff like that. Okay. If you're living outside your means, that's a personal problem, and I can recommend you a good financial manager. But you know, that's not something that you need to cast on to the people then. And if you have people that are saying that they want to be leaders and they're not willing to be uncomfortable for the benefit of the population, then that's not a leader. That's yeah.
They say,
oh, it is Kenya, you're not a colleague, you're a colonizer. That's basically what it is.
You quoting Kenya Kumar straight. August 19th, elections are coming up, like you said, 12 days away.
Yeah.
We've been hearing a lot of talk from the community and also from government officials and parliamentarians that, yes, you know, the way that we campaign, this is our culture. With the standing in front of the polls and the rallies that we have and the giveaways and the T-shirts and all of that. However, sometimes people look at PFP and they see that, okay, PFP is not in that direction. They do not understand what Sint Maarten politics is all about. So why should I even consider them when they are outside of what we consider normal around election time?
Yeah.
How can you, I don't want to use the word convince, but let people know that your way of how you look at politics and how you want to govern is the same, but without all the fanfare. Because that's what people are looking at PFP. PFP is just the quote unquote uptight party.
I'm away.
Yeah.
I'm away.
No, I it's so funny to hear that, because when I look at the 2019-2020 campaign, and then I look at how campaigning went last time. When we started off, we said, you know, we're going to do town halls, we're not going to do rallies. We're also going to focus primarily on the team aspect of campaigning. You know, we were sending candidates 2 by 2, which we still do. Sometimes now, you know, three of us at a time. We focused on team posters rather than individual. We pushed for that sense of unity, and even internally, the need for cohesion takes priority over everything. The first question we don't ask, well, how big is your family and how many votes can you bring? It's really, how do you fit into this team? That's really what the focus has been. And then if we fast forward to last campaign, leading up to January, all of a sudden, you know, oh, we have 2 candidates and pairing number 2 with the number 10 or the number 1 with the number 23, you know, and I found that very cute because it says that what we want to accomplish is already working. It's already happening. So I think that, you know, political culture is something that is ever changing. It's ever shifting. We are one of the only places that still has that type of bacchanal on election day. The French side itself does not have that. You're not allowed. And I think if we're talking about unification of the 2 sides and harmonization of the 2 sides, you just have to look to the neighbors to the north. A lot of times people say, oh, you know, you're coming in with these European ideas. Not really. We're coming in with Caribbean ideas, because no island lets you do that. When I mentioned this to friends of mine close to the political scene in you know, Jamaica, Trinidad, etc., Antigua, that's not, they were like, what do you mean you have candidates stand outside polling stations on the day of elections? It's weird to them, you know? So I think culture is a thing that changes. It's not static. That's the reality of it. There are things that were part of our culture that are no longer a part of our culture, you know? And I think we have to recognize that, and that even your political culture has to change. And you know, the feedback that I've gotten anyway from persons is that they were happy to hear that there will be no rallies. Many people are like, ugh, that they're still happening. You know, of course, you're not going to hear it as a party that does that, because in the echo chamber in which you exist, everybody's saying we want the rallies. You know, but outside it, but again, that is you listening to yourself and your cabal, you know, your immediate surroundings, and not listening to the people, and you know, having your finger on the pulse of the people, and the people are wanting that shift. So
I think I'll jump in and say that I think it's just hard times now, and we need to change to survive. Change is inevitable. It's automatic. You have to adapt to the times. And now, if you're doing big rallies and you're spending that kind of money in an economy that is going down, that shows that you're not aligned with us. If you're wasting money on big speakers and big posters and big signs and big signage and more marketing and more budgets and paying people for things that you probably could put into the community that would be more productive, and you're only doing that for campaign season, that shows a lot of your morale, that shows a lot of your solidarity, and that shows a lot of your integrity towards your people. I don't think they should stop. Keep making an A out of yourself if you want. Have fun with it and waste your money. I hope the people can pick through the nonsense and figure out that they need to find somebody that's going to be more transparent with them and be honest with them.
I think
we need to sit down. Yeah, you need to sit down. You know, and I think now, one thing PFP have always said, we're not going to do it like how they do it. We're going to do it how we want to do it. Whether you're talking about culture, whether you're talking about history, I'm sorry, politics is not a culture. It's not. It is something of your future that you need to grasp. You need to understand. You need to vote consciously about your future and what you want to see for your nation, your kids. It's not a culture thing, and you need to separate it.
Right.
Screw anybody that thinks that it's like that. It's not. It is your future, and I'm sorry, you're not taking it serious enough. I have been in the same situations, and I've seen how people look at it, and I'm sorry, it's painful to see. You need to ask them the tough questions, and you need to get the tough answers that they don't want to answer you. Every time you ask them a question, they go around it. You need to ask the right questions. I think that everyone needs to go out and vote, but they need to go out with a sense of pride. They need to be honest. I'm not saying that you need to show colors or show t-shirts, but you really need to go out there and you need to pick wisely. And I've said it over and over. Don't pick secretly, because they don't. You need to go out and you need to bring a friend. Spread the word on something that you feel and you are believing in. And pick a candidate you believe in and reach out to that candidate. Normally, it shouldn't be them coming to your doors and harassing you and begging you. No, it should be the other way. Find them, hold them accountable, and ask them the tough questions so that you can do it.
When you do ask some people in the community about the current formation of the coalition, which they call the 2x4, some people are, if you ask them, they would say that they were actually disappointed in PFP forming the current coalition with the partners involved, because some people said, listen, I could have seen this being shaky from the beginning. So some people are quite disappointed that, you know what, based on what was in front of you, they felt that PFP should have said, you know what, even though we wanted to go into government after this election, they should have said, you know what, I don't think this is the right fit for us. Let's just go back into opposition, or find another way how we could make this work.
Right.
I'm sure you've heard it yourself as well. Moving forward to August 19, people might be skeptical to say, let's vote for PFP again, because we don't want this situation to happen, because maybe they just got into the formation that they're in now because they just want to keep certain individuals or certain parties up.
Right.
How do you tell the people that feel that way, maybe that it's not that what they think?
No, it's not that at all. And you know, I've heard that as well, that concern, but I've also heard the alternative. Immediately following, even leading up to the January elections, you had persons that were sending their thoughts on what could be a possible constellation afterwards. And I have to say that the sentiment towards the previous government was heavily negative to both the parties in that previous government. It was heavily negative, and I communicated this to their respective party leaders at the time as well. And I think that's something that, not to say that we were trying to keep people out, but ultimately, some of the commentary that was given to me about who we wanted to put forward for ministers and such from the previous government, like, I don't really see the business of you saying that your camp has an issue with me putting someone forward as a minister candidate, you know, especially when internally you have so many glaring issues in the characters that you've chosen to surround yourself with. And I think that's something that we also have to continue to look at. And, you know, persons have also said, well, you know, that was an eight-man majority, so it wasn't gonna last. It was tough, and the previous government was also 8 at the very end. The previous government had persons from within it coming to us to try to drop it and throw it down over these last 4 years. And again, it goes back to character, which is something that we cannot legislate. People, as Marlon said, have to be able to look at the candidates that are asking for your vote and look at what is the measure of them. What is in their heart? What is in their core? Are these people that are willing to be uncomfortable? Or are they people that just kind of bully their way into getting what they want out of you, that attack current and former members on a stage or whatever, you know? So you have to look at the soul of people, I would say. And 8, 9, 10, it doesn't matter. There have been governments with a 10-person backing in parliament that have crumbled. Because ultimately, if persons' characters want to break something down, it doesn't matter how many persons you have backing you, they will find a way to make it happen. And I always say as well, it takes somebody to just open a door and let someone walk through, and that is what causes the chaos. And that's what we saw happen, unfortunately. But I can't say for certain that it wouldn't have happened had we entered into a coalition with anyone else. That risk is always there when there are characters that people choose to put on their slate that are really there for themselves. It really doesn't matter if it's 8 people in a coalition, 9 or so. It's ultimately it boils down to that. And I know it's uncomfortable to hear that, because nobody likes to hear, well, you are maybe not a good person, but a lot of people perform goodness. They perform it. It's Academy Award winning sometimes, the goodness that they perform, because ultimately that is not what you are. You say the words, you don't know what they mean, but you say them because they sound nice. And I think that it's time for us to just stop hoodwinking people like that. We've committed to being honest and transparent about everything that this party does. And, we're disappointed, of course, with what has happened. But I also know that it wouldn't have happened if the other 2 parties had left the door closed. And I've told them that as well. So
Like you said,
it's not a surprise for them to hear it on the radio.
nobody jumps ship without a life raft.
Yeah,
All right.
exactly.
I know PFP had some deal breakers for the last election. This election, we have 2 new parties that will be contesting the upcoming election. Are those same deal breakers there? Have you added more? Have you amended your deal breakers?
No, the deal breakers have not been amended. In fact, I'm hoping this week to hear about one of them, which is of course that El Beham on tendering. Had great conversations with the Minister of Finance about that. So looking forward to getting an update on that as well. But yeah, no, they have not changed, and it remains, especially the final deal breaker, on a commitment to integrity and a commitment to upholding ethical decision making. So any potential partners already know that, and the new parties that came in as well, they know that too. They can read it.
So if person want to find those deal breakers and also your manifesto, where can they find that?
The manifesto is available via our social media pages. There's a link that we will be sharing, especially in this last week. Also, if you see us on the road, we all have hard copies. We all have hard copies in our vehicles. So I don't have a back seat. I have a manifesto seat. So you could just stop us and grab one for yourself, or a couple for your colleagues if they're undecided as well. So definitely we have it available for those who want to read it.
All right. Eminem here with us this morning, Melissa and Marlon of Party for Progress, candidate number 1 and candidate number 9, respectively. August 19th, once again, your final message. Well, not final, because we still have 12 days, but I'm sure you'll be back again.
Yeah.
Your message to the voters out there.
I think, as Marlon said it perfectly earlier, look at who's there, look at who's asking for your vote, and speak to them, reach out to them. People message me randomly on Facebook all the time. I answer everything because I'm just that good at multitasking. But definitely reach out, ask questions, and again, look at the character of the person that's asking you for their vote, because really what it boils down to, the decisions over the last 40, 50, 60 years is characters and how they play, whether they play well with leadership and with the people or not.
All right, Marlon?
Sense of pride. Take pride in your vote. When you go there, don't whisper it. Don't be scared. If you pick this person, you believe in this person, you need to say it loud and proud to your family and friends. And if they support you, they'll be able to vote with you. We don't want to see the votes being spread along all these parties. You need to weed out the truth from the non-truth, the pulp from the juice, and you really need to go straight to the point and take pride in your vote. But go out there, make your vote count. Make sure you take pride into something that your ancestors have died for.
All right. Thank you guys for joining us today. Once again, August 19th, go out and vote, and much success on the campaign trail. Before you leave, the question of the day, facebook.com/laser101. How many fans do you currently have at home?
Wait, that's a real question?
Because I know people bought extra fans. How many fans? So besides the ceiling fans, you got to count in your standing fans,
my whole family has gone into the charging fans.
Yes.
My daughters are walking around with the old school PFP fans, but not just PFP.
Okay.
But I mean all different types. And then I definitely would say that you have the charging fan. My mother also likes the standing.
Right.
Yeah.
She was getting ready for that wave. I would say I've seen at least 9 editions.
In the house.
But that's 2 households.
Yeah.
9, yeah.
Okay.
I have I got some solar powered fans. I have both. two or three.
Mhm.
I know my sister has some standing rechargeable fans, so might steal one
All right.
just in case she's listening.
No
So she
teeth
knows.
in. Remember what they said. No teeth. All right. Well, thank you again, guys, for joining us today on the Super Duper Morning Trail.
Thank
Like I
you.
said, much success on the campaign trail. Time
Thanks,
for
Suppa.
birthdays. Facebook friend Fiesta.